The grandest event of the century had finally arrived, on the beautiful planet of Zefter Prime, a place where stars shimmered and skies were painted with shades of pink and gold. The most anticipated event in the galaxy was taking place. It was the night of the celestial Bala gathering of the wealthiest and most powerful beings from across the stars. For the past month, word had spread across the cosmos that King Zalar, ruler of the Zefter Empire, was searching for a queen. His kingdom stretched across hundreds of planets. His wealth was beyond measure, and his power was unmatched. Yet, despite all of this, he had never taken a wife. There was no heir to the throne, no queen to sit by his side. The reason for this remained a mystery, and it only added to the allure of his invitation. Every royal family wanted their daughter to win the king's favor, and the competition was fierce. The ball was held in the Palace of Stars, an enormous structure made of translucent crystal that sparkled under the twin moons of Zefta. Inside, the air smelled of sweet perfumes, and the soft music of alien instruments floated through the grand hall. Princesses from every corner of the galaxy, dressed in the most stunning gowns, glided across the marble floor, their faces painted with eager smiles, their eyes glittering with ambition. Among the 80 princesses vying for the king's attention was one figure who stood out not because of her beauty or her royal lineage, but because she was not a princess at all. She was a human maid named Serena. Serena had been working at the palace for several years. She wasn't royalty, and she certainly wasn't rich. She had been hired to serve as a maid for the royal household, and that was the extent of her station. But tonight, as the ball unfolded around her, she had more work than ever before. Serena bustled about, ensuring that the food was properly served, the wine was plentiful, and the guests were happy. She made sure that the hall was spotless, the tables filled with delicious treats, and the dancers had what they needed. But her heart wasn't in the work. Her mind wandered as she watched the princesses, their beautiful gowns and shimmering jewels catching the light. They were so perfect in every way, she was nothing like them. Serena knew her place. She had always known her place. But there was one thing she couldn't help but notice. King Zalar. He was unlike anyone she had ever seen. Tall, with dark skin that shimmered with an iridescent glow, his features were sharp and regal. But there was something about his eyes that intrigued her. They were deep and thoughtful, as though he saw things that others didn't. As the night went on, Serena couldn't help but steal glances at the king, watching as he interacted with the princesses. They were all trying so hard to impress him, each one performing perfectly, dancing, speaking, smiling with practiced grace. Yet King Zalar seemed distracted. His gaze often wandered, his attention shifting from one princess to the next, but never seeming to truly settle. Suddenly the lights in the grand hall dimmed. The music slowed, and all eyes turned to the stage where a figure stepped forward. It was King Zalar, standing tall, with his deep, commanding presence. The room fell silent. "My dear guests," he began, his voice rich and deep tonight, "we celebrate not only the elegance and beauty of the galaxy, but also the strength that lies within us all. I have invited you here not only to admire your beauty, but to test your character. It is not the crown or title that makes a queen, but the heart and mind that guide her." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The princesses exchanged curious glances, wondering what the king meant. Serena, too, felt a stirring in her chest. What was he saying? King Zalar raised a hand, and the murmur died down. "I will not choose my queen based on beauty alone, nor will I choose her based on status or wealth. No, my challenge to you, the 80 princesses, is this. You will each face a test. You will be asked to prove your loyalty, your intelligence, and your kindness. The princess who demonstrates these qualities will win my favor and my hand in marriage." A gasp went through the room. The princesses had expected a different kind of challenge, one based on their beauty or their family's prestige. But this was something entirely different. King Zalar continued, his eyes scanning the room. "This test will not be easy, but it will be fair. You may find that those who appear to be your rivals are, in fact, your greatest allies. I want to see who you truly are. When the stakes are high, when you are tested beyond what you think you know about yourselves, The princesses stood frozen, shocked by the king's words. Some looked at each other nervously, while others tried to hide their anxiety with forced smiles. They had all been groomed for this moment, prepared from birth to win the king's heart. But now the rules had changed. They didn't know what to expect. But one thing was clear. King Xalar was unlike any ruler they had ever known. Serena, on the other hand, stood off to the side, unnoticed by most. She continued her duties, setting down a tray of drinks, arranging the flower vases, and keeping the ball running smoothly. But inside, her heart raced. She had heard the king's words, and for the first time, she felt something stir within her. She had always known that she was different from the princesses, but now, she felt something else, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she could be more than just a maid. That perhaps she could show the king something that the princesses couldn't. But what? What could she offer him that the others couldn't? She wasn't rich. She wasn't royal. She had no title to her name, but she had something else: humility. Serena wasn't used to grand displays or complicated gestures. She understood people, understood what they needed. She had spent her life serving others, listening to their problems, offering comfort, and lending a hand when no one else would. As the princesses began to prepare for the challenge, Serena's thoughts raced. What was this test going to be? Was it something she could do? Would the king even notice her? Just then, the grand doors to the ballroom opened. The figure entered the room. Young princess resplendent in a golden gown, her crown gleaming in the light. She was the first to speak, her voice laced with both authority and arrogance. I am Princess Alira of the Taylan system, and I intend to win this contest. I have trained my entire life for this moment, and I will not let anyone stand in my way. The other princesses nodded, murmuring in agreement. They, too, were ready to prove their worth. They all thought they had the qualities King Xalar was looking for. But none of them knew what the test would truly require. Serena, meanwhile, continued her work quietly, trying to push aside the anxiety that gripped her chest. She wasn't like the other girls, but perhaps that was exactly what would set her apart. Perhaps she could prove to King Xalar that it wasn't beauty, wealth, or bloodlines that made someone worthy. It was something deeper, something only a few could understand. As the princesses prepared for the challenge ahead, Serena couldn't help but wonder what would happen when the king saw her for who she truly was. The ball had grown even more lively as the night wore on. Princesses stood in groups, whispering eagerly to one another, trying to guess what challenges the king had in store. But none could agree on what he meant by loyalty, intelligence, and kindness. These were qualities they all thought they had, but how could they prove them to King Xalar? Serena continued to serve the guests, her mind racing with possibilities. She had overheard some of the princesses speaking of their plans to impress the king. Some spoke of performing great feats of strength or intellect, while others whispered about making grand speeches or displaying their family's wealth. Serena knew that none of these approaches would impress King Xalar. She could tell from his words he didn't care about their status or their power. He wanted something else. But what? She pushed the thought from her mind. She had no time to worry about the competition. Her task was to make sure the event ran smoothly. She adjusted the tablecloths, made sure the dishes were perfectly arranged, and quietly observed the princesses as they mingled with the royal guests. One princess, Lyra, was especially active. She had already begun to gather a group of fellow royals around her, her laughter filling the room. She seemed to think that charm and beauty were all she needed to win King Xalar's heart. Serena watched her, shaking her head softly. Alira had the perfect appearance. Her golden gown shimmered under the lights. Her jewels sparkled like stars, but something about her didn't seem real. It was all too perfect, too rehearsed. Serena had seen it before, the false smiles, perfect words meant to win others over. Another princess, Princess Mirabelle, was practicing a speech in a corner. Serena could hear her soft, commanding voice as she recited lines about strength, bravery, and loyalty. She had the eloquence of a royal born to lead. But would those words be enough to sway the king? Serena didn't know. But she did know that King Xalar wasn't like the other royals. He was different, and somehow she could sense that he was watching everyone. His gaze drifted from princess to princess, never lingering too long on any one of them. It seemed as if he was searching for something more than beauty or words, something that only a few could provide. The evening's mood shifted when a loud trumpet sound echoed through the palace, signaling the start of the first test. Serena's heart skipped a beat as she wiped her hands on her apron and stepped aside. Her curiosity piqued. The princesses gathered near the center of the ballroom, and King Zaylor stood before them on a raised platform. "Princesses," began, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Tonight, I will ask each of you to show me what you are truly made of. Your first task will be a test of loyalty and service. You will each be asked to perform a task for me, something that will require you to put others before yourself. You may not ask for help, and you must do it on your own. The one who performs the task with the most sincerity will prove their worth to me." A murmur passed through the crowd. The princesses exchanged glances, unsure of what the king meant. Serena couldn't help but wonder what King Zaylor had in mind. The first to step forward was Princess Alira. She moved confidently to the center of the room, where a table had been set with various objects. At King Zaylor's signal, she picked up a heavy, ornate crystal vase and began to clean it, her hands moving with practiced grace. She didn't seem to struggle, but there was a coldness to her movements, as if she were doing the task simply to appear competent. There was no heart in it, no true effort. The king watched her, his expression unreadable. When Alira finished, she turned to face him, her head held high, expecting praise. But King Zaylor said nothing for a long moment, his gaze fixed on her. "Princess Alira," said finally, his voice cold, "you did the task well, but I see no warmth in your actions. You performed it to perfection, but there was no heart in it. Loyalty is not about perfection, it's about the willingness to serve others without expectation of reward." Alira's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. She stepped back, a little shaken, but still confident that she had impressed him. Next came Princess Mirabelle, who approached the task with a different mindset. She picked up a set of delicate porcelain cups and began to arrange them in a precise pattern. Her movements were careful and deliberate, and there was a certain elegance in the way she worked. But as she finished, she turned to King Zaylor and gave him a rehearsed smile. "Your Majesty," she said, "I have completed the task exactly as you asked. I have shown my loyalty through my attention to detail." King Zaylor nodded slowly but said nothing. He didn't need to speak for long. "Princess Mirabelle," he said quietly, "you have done well, but once again I see no sincerity in your actions. You completed the task to perfection, yes, but loyalty is more than precision. It is about serving others out of love, not to gain favor." Mirabelle's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She stepped back, but her eyes lingered on King Zaylor for a moment longer, searching for any sign of approval. It was then that Serena, still standing off to the side, realized what the king was looking for. It wasn't about the task itself, it was about the intention behind it. The princesses had been trained to perform tasks perfectly, but none of them had thought. To infuse their actions with true meaning, Serena's heart raced as she felt a surge of understanding. Without thinking, she moved toward the task table. There were no princesses in her way, no royal audience watching her. Only King Zaylor's expectant eyes remained fixed on the group. Taking a deep breath, Serena picked up a delicate crystal bowl. It was heavy and beautiful, but it was also covered in a layer of dust. She didn't care about perfection. She cared about the task itself, the small service she could provide to make something shine. She cleaned it slowly, carefully, each movement deliberate but unhurried. Serena wasn't trying to impress anyone. She simply wanted to make the bowl look beautiful, as it deserved to be. She worked with such focus that she didn't notice the other princesses watching her. When she finished, Serena didn't turn to King Zaylor immediately. She stood there, holding the bowl in both hands, waiting for his reaction. The room was silent. The other princesses had completed their tasks, but none of them had shown the same quiet sincerity as Serena. They had performed their duties with their eyes on the prize, but Serena had simply worked because it was the right thing to do. King Zaylor stepped down from his platform and walked toward The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath as he took the bowl from her hands. He inspected it closely, his eyes narrowing as he traced the edges of the crystal with his fingers. "This," he began, his voice soft but filled with something deeper. "This is loyalty. You didn't perform this task for me. You did it because it was the right thing to do. There is no perfection in your actions, but there is truth in them. You have shown me what I have been searching for." Serena's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected those words. But more than anything, she felt a warmth spread through her. King Zaylor had seen something in her that the other princesses hadn't offered. She hadn't tried to impress him, she had simply been herself. And somehow, that was enough. The night seemed to stretch on forever, the air thick with anticipation. As the second test came to a close, King Zaylor's eyes never left Serena. The princesses, though still hopeful, had begun to realize something they hadn't considered before. They had performed their tasks perfectly. But it was Serena, humble and unassuming, who had captured the king's attention. It wasn't because of her royal lineage, her beauty, or her training. It was because of something far more powerful, her sincerity. The ballroom, once filled with chatter and the clinking of glasses, had grown quiet. Every guest, every royal watched in stunned silence as King Zaylor stood before Serena. His gaze was not cold, nor was it filled with indifference. There was something deeper there, an appreciation that only a few could understand. "Serena," King Zaylor spoke, his voice calm but filled with a quiet force. "You have shown me something that the others could not. You did not serve for recognition. You did not serve for the crown. You served because it was the right thing to do. Your loyalty is not rooted in ambition, but in a genuine desire to make things better." Serena felt a wave of emotion surge through her. Her hands trembled slightly, but she stood tall, looking up at the king. She had never imagined a moment like this. How could she? She was only a maid, after all. She had been raised to serve, not to be noticed. Yet here she was, standing before the ruler of an empire. Her actions acknowledged in a way she had never thought possible. The princesses, still standing in their perfect gowns, exchanged confused glances. Some whispered to each other, others fidgeted uncomfortably. They had assumed that beauty, wealth, and status were all that mattered in the king's eyes. But Serena had shown them that there was another path, a path that didn't rely on what you had, but on who you were. King Zaylor turned his attention back to the gathered crowd. The princesses held their breath, waiting for him to announce his decision. But instead of continuing with the traditional formality of the ball, he did something that surprised everyone. He dismissed them. "You have all proven yourselves in your own ways," King Zaylor said, his voice carrying over the room. "But none of you have shown me what I truly seek. None of you have shown me the heart I am looking for." There was an awkward silence, broken only by the soft rustle of fabric as the princesses shifted uncomfortably. Serena stood in place, uncertain of what was happening. Had she failed somehow? Was this just another challenge? But then, King Zaylor spoke again, his words making everything clear. "I have spent too long searching for a queen who fits the mold of royalty. A queen who fits the expectations of my people. But what I truly need is someone who will stand with me through every trial. Someone who will not be driven by power, but by love and compassion. And that person is you, Serena." Serena's heart stopped. The world seemed to fall away, leaving just the two of them standing in the center of the grand ballroom. Her eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. Did he say her name? Was he truly choosing her? The princesses were stunned. There were gasps, quiet mutterings, and looks of disbelief as the words sank in. But Serena, standing there, still could not believe it. A maid, a simple servant, had just been chosen by the alien king to be his queen. How could this be real? King Zaylor stepped forward, his gaze never leaving Serena. He took her hands in his touch warm and steady. "Serena," continued, his voice soft, yet firm, "you may not be of royal blood. You may not come from a line of powerful rulers, but you possess something that none of them have, something far more important. You have a heart that can see past the titles and the crowns. You have the ability to love without expectation, to serve without seeking reward. Tears filled Serena's eyes, though she did her best to hold them back. She had never imagined that her simple actions, her quiet acts of kindness and service could lead to something like this. She had spent her life thinking that she would always be in the background, always working without ever being seen. But now, here she was, standing at the center of it all. King Zaylor gently lifted her chin, tilting her head so that she looked directly into his eyes. I choose you, Serena, not because you are perfect, but because you are real. You are someone I can trust, someone I can build a future with. Together, we will lead the people of Zeftar. Together, we will show them what true strength is. Serena blinked, the reality of the moment slowly sinking in. She could hardly believe it. She wasn't a princess. She wasn't a royal. She didn't come from a rich or powerful family. And yet she was being chosen to stand by the side of an alien king. The princesses, meanwhile, stood in shocked silence. They had trained their whole lives for moments like this, had been groomed for royal marriages, political alliances, and grand ceremonies. But none of them had understood what King Zaylor truly sought. They had focused on the wrong things, on appearances, on status, on wealth. But the king had seen something in Serena that none of them could offer. As the moment stretched on, King Zaylor turned to the crowd, his voice ringing out with authority. Let it be known to all present, Serena. The maid, the humble servant of my household, is the one I have chosen. She will be my queen, and together we will rule the empire with wisdom, compassion, and love. The ballroom erupted in whispers, some in awe, others in disbelief. But Serena didn't hear them. She only heard the steady beating of her heart and the sound of King Zaylor's voice. I never expected this, Serena said quietly, her voice trembling. I never thought someone like me could be chosen for something like this. King Zaylor smiled gently. Sometimes the things we least expect are the very things that change our lives forever. You have shown me what it means to be truly powerful, Serena. Power is not about titles or wealth. It is about the strength of your heart, the ability to love, to serve, and to be true to yourself. And that is why I have chosen you. Serena's heart swelled with emotion. She had never known that a simple act of kindness could lead to such a monumental change in her life. She had always felt small and insignificant. But now, standing beside King Zaylor, she felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. She wasn't a princess, but she was something far more important. Someone who had been seen for who she truly was, as the night drew to a close. Serena and King Zaylor stood together, ready to face the future. The princesses, still in shock, had no choice but to accept what had just happened. The ball was over, but for Serena, a new chapter was just beginning. She had proven that being royalty wasn't about having power, it was about having the heart to serve, to love, and to lead with kindness. And so, under the glowing twin moons of Zeftar Prime, a new queen was born not from blood, but from a heart that knew no bounds.